Hi guys, Glader here. So today I have another video about World of Warcraft server emulation. And this one will be particularly interesting because we actually do something. While in the previous videos we just demonstrated essentially the technology where you were taking GladNet 3 and receiving messages and just establishing connections and showing that you could have thousands of connections and it would run okay and stuff like that. But today we're actually going to talk to the FreecraftCore authentication database. Now, the logon is not completely implemented. I have implemented server or client authentication with SRP a long time ago, but I never anticipated actually doing server emulation, and so I have to go and do that eventually. But today we're just going to show the client sending a message, and we're actually going to check the database, FreecraftCore database, to see if an account exists. So there's been not really some major changes to GladNet 3 or the actual project. We're still in this test server. We've got some stuff where we're registering. Let's go over actually some of the database stuff real quick. I wanted to show you that we're using Entity Framework Core, or 7, whatever you want to call it, and it generated a bunch of models directly from the MySQL database from FreecraftCore. These are all code generation. I've not created these myself, and I went ahead and let's close all this crap. Just have a simple user account repository with just one method exposed to check if an account exists, and then we have I'm frozen right now. We have one implementation, which I'll be able to pull up in a second once this unfreezes. There we go. And it's just checking to see if an account exists with that name. Very simple stuff, nothing special. But one of the issues was we've got handlers, right? We've got packet handlers, and there's only ever one created, and everybody shares the same handler. It's not like ASP where we create a controller per request. And so one of the interesting things that had to be solved is we needed to create an instance of the service that sits in between the actual database and our packet handler code, because you don't want to just do raw database stuff in there. You want to abstract it a bit. So I had to create some stuff for this to allow us to create a disposable service that we can query for account information. And so that's been figured out. Also, we created a handler project. Now we've got some really ugly IOC code here that does handler registration, so you don't have to actually look at this or ever mess with this. It's going to be generic soon, and what you do is just as long as you add handlers that are like this in the project, they'll get registered. You don't have to do any registering yourself. I could create one right now and it'll be handled, and actually we can do that in a few minutes. So let me go ahead and show you what we've added as handler. We added a new dependency, which is, the container was going to deal with all of that, and it's going to provide us, implementation of this. And what we do now is we actually, when we receive the logon challenge, we're just going to check to see if the database exists or the account exists. We're going to log it, and then since we can't send a success back, since it expects the SRP data, we're going to just tell it it's banned. But if it doesn't exist, we're going to tell it we don't know it. And then we send it, async. Everything's async here. Doesn't block at all. Database doesn't block, nothing. So let's go ahead and just run this. Nothing's changed in like the session or anything like that. It's still just, routing in place, I guess you could say. So let's go ahead and run this. I've got the server running here. And alright, well that's just some logging data that I failed to remove just yet. I gotta remove that. So we'll send Glader, which is an account in the database, so let's see what happens. The very first request is going to take a few seconds because behind the scenes any framework core needs to warm up, needs to generate the query, compile some stuff, and see, oh yeah, look, account exists. We've been disconnected. Yeah, so you can see it says true, the account exists. You know, nothing too cool there. Now if we send this, we can't get the message before it disconnects us, which is disappointing. Let me show you what's actually happening. So you would see it if that wasn't happening. So we go back into the handler, and we disconnect nearly immediately. So we're receiving the response. Alright, there we were able to get it before we disconnected. No, the information we entered is not valid. That's what it says. And if we type later, we can see the account's been closed. So it's a little iffy because sometimes we disconnect before we receive this. And yeah, so that's just the way that's set up right now. But yeah, so now there's pretty. Let me talk a little bit about, for people who aren't familiar with any framework. This was just generated with a few commands in the the command line, and we generated all these models. And now we can basically talk to the FreecraftCore database without any effort. And for now, that's what I'm gonna prefer. I'm not gonna redo the entire database. There's no reason to do that right now. And so we've got all these models. We could even query the realm list if we wanted to. And the current design is just to create, a service interface, create an implementation that uses the actual context. This is generated by any framework as well. And, we actually don't need to create any more of these because it's generic. All you need to do is you need to come in here, and you need to register a new instance of the provider, because we need to create one and then dispose it as the request comes in, similar to ASP, but that's done behind the scenes in ASP. We only have one packet handler. Unlike ASP, we don't create the handler every request. It just wouldn't be efficient to do that. It works for web, but in high performance scenarios such as emulation like this, we cannot create a handler per request. We'd be creating thousands and thousands of handlers a second, and we don't want to do that because this isn't web. There's different requirements. So yeah, this is what registers all of the authentication handlers. So I got a whole bunch there. They'd all get registered. So that's the video for today, guys. I just wanted to show you that we got rid of that crap now. And this might look confusing and ugly. This is going to get simplified. And this is just some dependency registration stuff. Go look at stuff about AutoFac or IOC, DI, whatever. And yeah, and this is going to get cleaned up soon too. It's going to be a module as well, sort of like what's here. And it's going to be generic, so you won't even have to really pay much attention to it. You just inherit and then add that to the assembly. So yeah, that's it for today. In this video at least, I'm going to work on implementing the SRP authentication for the server side, which is going to be pretty similar to the client. I already know what I have to do. It's not going to be difficult. And then we can actually have actual authentication. And I'll make a video once we can do that. So yeah, that's just what I want to show you guys. Hopefully it was interesting. I'll see you guys in the next video.